Hello, my name is Sydney Story, and I am a student in the Distance Education PSYO 413 class. For my final exam presentation, I have decided to use the Week 7 module concerning the development of intergroup cognition. I have integrated the readings from Week 7 into my presentation as follows. Like Me, A Foundation for Social Cognition by Melstoff, Consequences of Minimal Group Affiliations in Children by Dunham, Barron, and Carey. The Ontogeny, the Motivation that Underlies In-Group Bias, written by Buttleman and Boehm. From American City to Japanese Village, a cross-cultural investigation of implicit race attitudes, written by Dunham, Barron, and Banerjee. I have also included the film called A Class Divided. The reading by Melstoff, Like Me, A Foundation for Social Cognition, concluded that infants are capable of differentiating between actions from themselves and others. Meanwhile, Dunham, Barron, and Carey summarized that children as young as 5 years old begin to influence intergroup bias and expect members of their group to act alike. According to the study, The Ontogeny of the Motivation that Underlies In-Group Bias, written by Buttleman and Boehm, children between the ages of 6 and 8 years old start to show in-group bias when faced in negative and positive resources. It is not until age 10 that these race attitudes begin to decline, concluded Dunham, Barron, and Banerjee. In the film A Class Divided, third-grade students showed out-group hate towards others with different eye colors, specifically blue-eyed people and brown-eyed people. However, this study was also replicated with adult participants, which led between racial bias of blue-eyed people and brown-eyed people. Together, these studies have led me to raise the question whether competition can influence in-group and out-group norms among children. In order to answer this question, I have located 3 articles that discusses how and if competition can influence in-group norms. The first article is a study by McGuire, Manstead, and Rutland called Group Norms, Intergroup Resource Allocation, and Social Reasoning Among Children and Adolescents. This article was published in 2017 by Development Psychology. The study sought to explore how in-group and out-group norms presents either cooperation or competitiveness in children and adolescents. The sample size consisted of 229 participants aged 8 to 16 years old. The study concluded that competitive in-group bias was more common when it was correlated with out-group norm competition. The second article I included is a study by Barron and Dunham, Representing Us and Them, Building Blocks of Intergroup Cognition, published in 2015. The main goal of this study was to determine instinctive repercussions of distributed group membership led to minimal group bias. The study consisted of 3 experiments with randomly assigning 6 and 8-year-olds to novel social groups. Barron and Dunham found that children prejudice in-groups unless faced with negative actions, resulting in negative predictions. However, children were known to present in-group love and produce out-group hate. The third study I have incorporated is called The Development of Intergroup Resource Allocation. The Role of Cooperative and Competitive In-Group Norms, written by McGuire, Rizzo, Killen, and Rutland, published in 2015 by the American Psychological Association. This study wanted to determine the effects of pro-social versus group-focused tasks on competitive and cooperative in-groups. The sample size consisted of 263 participants, ranging from children, adolescents, and adults. McGuire et al. Summarized that in-group bias was more present when in a competitive situation in children to acquire a pro-social goal, whereas adolescents and adults disregarded in-group norms when correlated with competitiveness. In relation to these 6 articles, I wanted to seek out more information on whether or not we can expect children to be associated with intergroup bias more so when presented in a competitive atmosphere. As a study by McQuarrie et al. 2017 concluded that from 8 years old, competitive in-group bias was more common when it was correlated with out-group norm competition. With this information, I would hypothesize that when children are presented in a competitive versus cooperated atmosphere, children will show more in-group bias in a competitive situation, whereas adults would favor fairness as opposed to competitiveness to achieve a goal. In order to conduct this study, I would follow the methods used by McQuarrie, Rizzo, Killen, and Rutland 2018. In this study, the development of intergroup resource allocation, the role of cooperative and competitive in-group norms. I would use a mixture of children, adolescents, and adults as my participants. I would use random assignment to order the participants to a competitive group who would wear a red colored outfit, or assign the participants to a cooperative group who would wear a blue colored outfit. The participants would complete a Qualtrics survey, an attribution task, and a simple teamwork project in order to determine how they would interact with one another. I would then gather the results and graph it accordingly. In a previous study, McQuarrie et al. 2018 summarized that in-group bias was more present when in a competitive situation in children to acquire a pro-social goal, whereas adolescents and adults disregarded in-group norms when correlated with competitiveness. Assuming my hypothesis is correct, I would expect children to work towards acquiring a pro-social goal when in-group norm is presented in a competitive element. More specifically, children would prioritize achieving a certain goal as opposed to fairness and equality, whereas the adolescents and adults would favor fairness as opposed to achieving a goal. A key factor in development is the atmosphere in which children are brought up in. From infancy, if we provide a surrounding that is based on equity, fairness, no racism, and present love towards others, then children will learn from how we act. They will begin to mimic our behavior and actions. When children are presented with in-group norms, children will agree with their group members and produce out-group hate to others. A solution to this would be to show children that everyone in this world is equal and deserves to be treated fairly, regardless of their ethnicity, their eye color, their skin color, or what team they may be on, or where they grew up on, or what school they go to, or the social norms or that they hang out with. At the end of the day, it is okay to have competition, but we need to express that everyone is a winner. I think this is very important to show children, especially at a young age, especially at infancy or preschool age, as this is when they start to develop certain biases. If we can prove to them that everyone is equal and that everyone should be treated fairly and equally, and to present in-group love as opposed to out-group hate, then we can make a difference in how children develop. Thank you very much.